Good evening. Welcome to Health Quest. I'm Deborah Arneson, your host for the evening, and tonight we have a great show for you. We have Dr. Joseph Brasco. Joe, thank you for being here. It's great having you back. And he's going to talk to us tonight about allergies, food sensitivities. You may have them and not know that you have them. You don't necessarily have an allergy and blow up or have your throat close or break out in hives. That doesn't, necessarily mean that you don't have allergies if you don't have those responses. So Joe Brasco is an expert in the field of intestinal and gut health, and he talks about the correlation here tonight regarding allergies and food sensitivities and why we all have so many and don't even know we have them, and how we can find out we have them and how to get rid of them. So thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, it's always great.
He's back.
He's back. We want you back many, many, many more times. So exactly, what are food allergies, Joe?
Well, I think that is one of the, just to go back a step, you had asked me to come up with a topic that I thought that was very important. And the more and more I think about this, I really think that food allergy / sensitivity is perhaps one of the most important things for anybody who has a chronic health issue. Or if you're feeling terrific and wonderful, then don't listen. Don't listen.
Change the dial.
Change the dial. Go watch Powerpuff Girls or Dexter's Lab or something. But if you have a chronic health concern, then I think that this is an important hour or so for you to spend.
So chronic, I'm sorry, real quick, chronic health problems would be like
anything.
Sinus problems.
Sinus problems,
aches
headaches.
in your joints, headaches.
Obesity, headaches.
Something that doesn't go away.
Right, something that's been kind of nagging you for years. And there have even been neurologic-like symptoms consistent with MS that have abated with a food allergy sensitivity program. So that's how powerful it can be. And I don't want to make it sound like, oh, this is the cure for everything.
Right.
But it is a wonderful place to start. It is an excellent place to start. So what are they? That's the controversial thing, because you'll have an immunologist and he'll tell us how we're both full of it, and they don't, because sometimes these reactions don't meet the classic definition of an allergy. That's why I prefer to use the term sensitivity. Okay. There's some negative interaction between an individual and a particular food. I mean, I would say that's the simplest, and that's not going to get us into any trouble with any vagabond immunologists if they happen to be in the area. We're not going to upset them. But if you notice a consistent negative response to a particular food, that's good enough for me. There was an interesting, and I do emphasize that because there was an interesting article in the Lancet, which is the British version of the New England Journal, very big medical journal in England, and it had to do with wheat sensitivity. And these individuals were convinced that they were wheat sensitive, and they did all sorts of elaborate immunologic tests, and there was no immunologic reaction. But when they were given wheat unbeknownst to them, and this is really gross, they actually had nasogastric tubes, which are thin plastic tubes that were snaked down into their stomach, and they had some disgusting homogenate that they didn't know what it was, and it was kind of squirted down the tube, so that way they didn't know what they were getting. And consistently, the people who felt they had wheat sensitivity, when wheat was in that gunk that they pushed down that NG tube, they got symptoms. And the authors concluded that maybe what was going on was not an allergy, but an interaction between the gut bacteria, the bacteria that live within our intestines, and the wheat, creating byproducts which then the individual was sensitive to. So it was really not the wheat, but it was actually a byproduct of wheat metabolism by the bacteria in their intestinal tracts. So talk about getting esoteric. But the point is, we don't need to get that esoteric. We just know wheat was not good for these folks, so stop using wheat.
Well, you really, I think, have to give total credence to a patient or a person knowing what their body's doing.
Absolutely.
I honor my patients, and my women especially, because they're really finely tuned or sensitive to what's going on with their internal mechanisms. And if there's a reaction, listen to it. And again, finding a physician who listens is an anomaly. It's very unusual.
But I think part of food sensitivity, part of it is really becoming aware of what foods you are sensitive with, and I think we're going to touch upon that in a little bit about, you know, concepts of how to do that.
Well, so you obviously feel that food sensitivities and allergies are extremely tied into health and illness or wellness.
I unquestionably, as I said, we started off the segment, I think if you're going to start any program, any kind of health program, weight loss, anything, it should start off with some couched within the concept of food allergy, food sensitivity, because in this society, I think that just about everybody has some level, to a greater or lesser extent, has some level of food sensitivity.
Sure. And what conditions do you see primarily in your practice?
Well, gastroenterology type problems.
What side effects? Like, you know, aches and pains, you know, rheumatoid
well, everything.
problems?
As I said, everything.
Is there a predominant one in this country?
No, I think it runs the gambit, from intestinal bloating, loose stool, hard stool, in-between stool, not-so-right stool, all that.
Oh, I know. It's with the holidays, and I have to tell you, I went to my brother's for the holidays, and they didn't have much except those little blow-up pizza dough things that are stuffed with some kind of funky fake cheese, and these little weenie sausages you used to have in barbecue sauce, and that was it. It was like, lesser of two evils.
I think a good
weenie sausage, I guess.
I think it was a good time for a fast.
Oh my gosh, my stomach was so unhappy with me. My intestines really revolted.
But that's doing what I do. That's the most common thing I see would be, again, diarrhea, constipation, abdominal bloating, heartburn. But this runs the gambit, as I said. Rashes are very common. People with persistent rashes or eczema. Oftentimes will go back into food sensitivities, chronic sinusitis. And I really, I try to hint to people who are in now for their 4th or 5th bout of, they're going to go on another Z-Pack for their chronic sinusitis, like, maybe go off of dairy for a while.
Sure.
And, and I have one of the women at work, she finally listened to me.
Yay! It's
I
a
feel
miracle.
like she listened, and she every day I come in, she is like, because she cannot believe that her sinuses have been completely cleared now that she's been off of dairy for 1 month,
That's great.
and her sinuses are wonderful, and she can't believe this is the dead of winter, and she's not, but she finally got on the right path.
So do you feel that food allergies are primarily genetic or passed on from family to family, father to mother, to son and daughter? Or
there probably is
there's
a genetic predisposition to everything.
Okay.
But I think predominantly this is a societal kind of thing. And first of all, I think it is because we have a ubiquit diet. And I stole that from Robert Crayhorn, one of my heroes. Ubiquit foods, and basically what ubiquit foods are foods that basically are the redundant foods in our diet, which are number one and two are dairy and wheat. Now you think about wheat. Okay, we don't say I had wheat today, but what you had for breakfast? Well, I had cereal. What's in wheat? Okay, what did you have for lunch? Well, I had a low-fat turkey on whole wheat bread. And what did you have for dinner? I had some pasta. So that you're getting wheat 3 times a day, 365 days a year. So I just think the fact that we have the same food over and over and over again.
And people like what they like.
Exactly. I think they've looked at it. I think we basically eat a combination of, most of us, of 8 to 10 foods in varying combination, in different forms, in different ways, but it's basically the same 8 to 10 foods. And this lack of diversity in the diet, I think, is
sensitivities.
Absolutely. Then we add some antibiotics for good measure, some non-steroidals. Non-steroidals being like the aspirins and the Advils and the Aleve. Can we get sued for any of this stuff?
No, but we're talking about like body abuse, and certain things abuse your body.
Alcohol, caffeine, all these things
anything in excess
create the quote-unquote leaky gut, which a term I really don't like all that much. But this.
We'll talk about dysbiosis then, which is an imbalance.
Right. Okay. Well, that refers, dysbiosis is a term coined to refer to imbalance in gut bacteria. And people are always fascinated when I tell them that we have about 3 pounds of bacteria in our GI tracts and it's kind of unbelievable. Yeah, woo! And
well, we hope that most of it's good guys, right?
Exactly, and it's not just one type of bacteria. It's a mix. It's a whole zoo of different types of bacteria, and there's a constant war going on in there. between the quote-unquote good guys and the quote-unquote bad guys. And again, things that we just had mentioned, like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which is a medical term for aspirin-like products, antibiotics, birth control pills in young women, a major source.
Some people 10, 15, 20 years on those guys.
Exactly. And all the other wonderful ways we abuse our body. All these things can cause disruption in the gut membrane, and they also can cause alterations in gut bacteria, which then all can lead to food sensitivities and food allergy.
Can you kind of segue real quickly and just explain to people how the gut relates to allergies? I mean, what happens in the small intestine for the most part?
Sure.
The importance of that area being pristine and healthy.
Well, what basically happens is that if we don't digest well, or again, if things are generated by the bacteria that are negative, over time they can kind of seep into the bloodstream.
Right.
And that's the whole concept of what's often termed in the alternative world as leaky gut syndrome. I think people have this image that their intestines turned into a sieve, and
they got holes.
they got holes in their intestine. I think because I do colonoscopy, and I scope the patient and said, well, do I have leaky gut? And it's like, no.
No, we're not going to see any sieves.
We're not going to see holes in your intestine. I think there's this misperception. But at a microscopic level, what is happening is that these undigested food particles or antigens of the food can permeate through the bowel wall and are gaining access to the bloodstream. And then over time, this process propagates itself, and therein lies the nidus for the allergic or sensitive reaction.
So basically your bloodstream becomes toxic.
Exactly. Well,
and those toxins will go to different areas of, say, sensitivity in the body.
And that will vary from
headaches or joint problems and things like that.
That's why people don't get it. But again, arthritis, the very medicines they're taking for hopefully controlling their arthritis is promoting their arthritis. And so if they clean up their diet and took a little boswellia, which actually is gut healing, and they clean up their diet, get rid of the wheat, get rid of the nightshades, and all of a sudden their dairy, their arthritis is going to improve. And it's a mind-boggling concept because they can't figure out what the heck does their knee have to do with eating wheat toast. They don't.
Why does it hurt? But the great thing is when you clean people up, then you take away all the perpetrators, the bad guys. If you stay off of them for 3, 4, 6 weeks, and then you bring them back and you see the direct correlation, you're like, wheat, knee hurt. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
all right, well, maybe he wasn't so crazy after all, which is a good thing.
It's like Tarzan, meat. We need to really simplify things.
So what is the best way for people to kind of self-diagnose?
Well, everybody wants, we're still married to the test concept. And, and everybody, and even some people are willing to pay big bucks for food allergy testing. And I'm not going to say they're not without merit. They're very interesting. But I think it's a burgeoning science, and I think that they're very expensive. They're not they may not be covered by insurance. In fact, insurance often doesn't cover them. And when I mean expensive, in the range of $300 to $500. I don't know if that's been your experience. And they are helpful. But again, remember, they're looking for a specific immunological reaction. And remember, we started this whole conversation with the story about the people sensitive to wheat. There was no immunological reaction. This was a reaction that was based on a sensitivity, something that couldn't be measured with a blood test. So I tell people, much to their dismay, the best way to do it is an elimination diet.
And what is that?
An elimination diet is basically a hypoallergenic diet, and it can go from everything to a complete fast. And I have no problems with that. Under the right conditions and under the right guidance, sometimes fasting can be a very healing and wonderful thing. Some type of
fasting with what, Joseph?
A water fast. We can go. That would be the most extreme. And I think for some people who are highly sensitive, that may even be the route
to go.
But for most people, fortunately, I don't think that is necessary. And then you can have mono diets, which are one food, all the way up to a point where I would just say, well, it's the most basic, the entry-level elimination diet, as I would say, go off of wheat and dairy for 2 weeks. And the reason there's nothing unholy about wheat and dairy is just